Are you done celebrating that win over the Brooklyn Nets? We're not either. We're going to talk about that. We'll talk about whether we should really be holding our expectations in check, or maybe not, and all the Kyrie stuff. Got to get to it, and it's going to happen right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can't. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-team, step back. We gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course, the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Karalis above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap, salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, keep John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. B.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. Thank you for making this show your first listen every day and part of your daily routine. Monday through Friday, you get a free daily podcast right here. However you're listening to this podcast, it's free, available everywhere podcasts exist, including YouTube. You can watch the show on YouTube if you would prefer. Then you get to see all little knickknacks in my background, all my crazy facial expressions, and this beard that I'm trying to shape just right for you on the YouTube page. I'm John Karalis. I cover the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. I've written a book called Boston Celtics All-Time All-Stars, and I was one of the media voters for the Boston Celtics 75th anniversary team. So I know a thing or two about the Boston Celtics. Today, later, third segment, Kyrie stuff. People have been emailing me about it. A lot of people have been talking about it. I didn't want to get into it yesterday. Third segment, Kyrie stuff. It's coming. Second segment, a lot of people and yesterday I said, this team is capable of the NBA Finals. We'll dive a little bit more deeply into that. But let's just, since we have a day, and because that win was so huge, let's bring in Tom Westerholm of the _ crew on Twitter to relive this awesome win over the Brooklyn Nets and just kind of bask in the glow of that a little bit. Tom, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I had to do some shaping, not so much of my beard, but the hair that I have on my head.
Yeah,
I had to shape that up a little bit for your YouTube people. Yeah.
If you turn my head upside down, you get more, like you've got more on top, I've got more on the bottom.
Yeah.
So it's your youth, which I despise you for.
I understand and respect that. I'm good, man. I'm good. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, no, I legitimately want to know how you're doing. And you're just sitting here crapping all over me. No problem. That's welcome to the new dynamic here in the Locked On Celtics podcast. All right, so you watch this game.
I did.
Rewatch this game. I rewatched this game today. So I'm sitting there. I like to rewatch the game. I go to the treadmill on my little premises over here. I got my little laptop that I flip over to a tablet, and I put it on there, and I just walk along and watch the game. And normally I'm like watching off-ball stuff and really trying to break things down. And I'm watching this first half, and I'm realizing in the second quarter, like all I'm doing is just watching this game. I'm not breaking this down. I'm not analyzing nothing. I'm just looking at this. I'm like, wow, this is fun. I guess I'm gonna have to like watch it again to try to break stuff down. But that was just a lot of fun to watch.
It was. I mean, it was good basketball. It was fun to see the Nets out as an actual basketball team. Like I know they weren't 100% full. Like obviously Ben Simmons is coming at some point, but like it was really fun. I mean, I love Kevin Durant, man. Like I like his whole thing. I like his basketball. I like his just middle finger. Honestly, I like his middle finger to the media. I think it's funny. I think it was hilarious that he was yapping at Glenn Davis when Glenn Davis was getting kicked out of his seat last night. Like all this stuff, man. I love Kevin Durant, everything about him, and he's such a joy to watch. I think his injuries robbed us of watching a guy who I think is one of probably has been the best player in the NBA for longer than we give him credit for you really kind of break everything down. So watching him duel Tatum and just, I think one of the things that's made this season so much fun to watch is that there is still the old guard, right? Like Steph Curry has his moments where he is just like on another level. Kevin Durant, when he's healthy, it's so much fun to watch him. But there's also this new guard that isn't ready, that isn't going to wait around anymore, right? There's like the Tatums, the Ja Morants, all these guys like who are just ready to go and to hoop and to just be stars now. And last night was the real clash between those two, right? It was like the old guard of like your Kyries, your KDs, and the new guard with your Tatums. And, even Jaylen Brown played pretty well, even with his, bum ankle. Like, yeah, just a blast, like really fun basketball game. And, I think kind of indicative of why this season is, in my opinion, so much more fun than last year, league-wide. Like, not just the Celtics, but also like league-wide.
It's funny to watch Kevin Durant and Robert Williams run down the floor side by side. I'm like, these dudes are basically the same size.
Yeah.
And one is, and I love Rob, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm criticizing him for this, but one is a more one-dimensional, I'm setting picks, I'm rolling, I'm catching lobs. I'm just a freak athlete, catch lobs, and, whatever. And Kevin Durant's like, yeah, I've got all the skills of everything, and I am going to – you can't switch on to me, Robert Williams, because I'm just going to bust right by you because I got handles. And I can shoot over you, and I don't care how tall or athletic you are. I'm just going to shoot over you. And it's like, that's just not fair. That's just not fair. And the fact that Kevin Durant continues to come off of serious injuries and steps right onto the floor is like, still me, still KD over here. Like, you missed all that time with a knee injury that people feared the worst. 2 games back, and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna like duel Jayson Tatum to a standstill. And the reason why Brooklyn lost that game, honestly, when I look back, and especially the last 5 minutes, is the Celtics made a couple of more shots. They just made a couple more plays, and a couple of bounces went the right way. And that's always the difference in a game like that, where two teams are just, both teams played great, and one team just made a couple of plays, got a couple of bounces, and they ended up winning. Play that game exactly over again. A couple bounces go a different way, and Brooklyn wins. And Kevin Durant out there is just like, yeah, I'm just 37, no problem. Like, easy 37. He played 39 minutes and looked like he could have played another game like right after that. It's crazy. Does he ever he never looks tired. Blows my mind.
He doesn't. And I think to your point about him scoring right coming off these injuries, right? Like it goes to show just what the level of basketball player that he is. Like, not just like there's a lot of guys who add, who mix in being an awesome basketball player with athleticism. KD, like, I mean, he's a perfectly fine athlete. He's like smooth and everything, but he's not, leaping out of the gym or anything like that. And he doesn't have to. He's very tall, and he is otherworldly talented at basketball. Like, you just, I mean, once truly in a generation, maybe once in every couple of generations type basketball player. I mean, just, I don't know where he's going to rank at the end of his career, but he is an all-timer. And I'm trying to make more of a point of enjoying some of these all-time guys because, like, yeah, like LeBron James, I know Celtics fans, like have their thoughts about him, but like, we're only going to get to see LeBron James for so many more years. Like, how many more years are we going to get to see Kevin Durant? Like, we should be enjoying these guys to the highest level that we can. And for me, it's especially KD because he's just such a pure hooper. I think he's going to be able to play for a long time because he's so talented and so tall. But like, I hope so. I hope I'm right because, man, I love watching that guy.
Well, I hope everybody's enjoyed this edition of the Locked On Nets podcast. Let's flip on over to the Locked On Celtics podcast. I mean, look, honestly, the admiration for a guy like Kevin Durant is I'm with you. We should all appreciate everything about him because he's done everything the right way. I think I know that the pushback's going to be like, well, he ditched OKC. Like, I don't care about that. So I am a huge fan of his. For sure, just like everyone else should be. In the meantime, just watching Jayson Tatum over again, you really start to get this appreciation of what he did. And I've heard multiple people say this over the course of the day, and I think it's a great way to put it. He took over without playing hero ball.
Yeah.
And that's the absolute pinnacle of what a player should be when you can take over, but it's not because you're just hogging the spotlight. It's when it came time to make certain plays, you made certain plays. And, there's that one play late in the game where whether he lost his dribble or he was going to go one way and whatever, where he pulled it back and went through Nick Claxton. that's just awesome basketball. He's just, I'm going to get to where I want to go and be great. But he gave the ball up willingly. Looking at the potential assists in the game, Marcus Smart had 11. Marcus Smart had an underrated game. Jayson Tatum had 10 potential assists in this game, in addition to the few assists that he did have. A couple of secondary assists, but really just passing the ball really well. Now I have one question here with Tatum. He did this against the Brooklyn Nets, which before the game I wrote on Boston Sports Journal, get to the rim, get to the middle of the floor because they don't have anybody. Andre Drummond's not a rim protector. Like they don't have, like Claxton can block some shots, but he's not a defender like that. Do this against Utah. Do this against, a team, one of these teams or even Cleveland. I know Jarrett Allen's going to be out, but if the Celtics play Cleveland and they're at full strength or in the playoffs even, Cleveland's the matchup that we keep talking about the Celtics want, everybody wants, but they're shot blockers back there. Do this against the shot blockers. Yeah. And we're really like, Tatum's like right on the cusp. Do this every season. Do this all season long, and you're an MVP candidate, but do this against the shot blockers and really, really just get to that elite MVP level.
Yeah, I'm curious what it looks like against some of those shot blockers, right? Because, I think there are guys, like, for instance, it's kind of funny because I think there are guys, one of the things Tatum is doing really well, you mentioned that he went right into Claxton on that play where he pulled it back, which was like kept it in the same hand sham god type move. It was a ridiculous drop.
Yeah.
Like really weird. And then so you mentioned that he went through Claxton at that point, and one of the things he does is when he jumps into people, he's so big now that he pushes people back, and then he's able to then they can't extend and block his shot. And I think there are shot blockers that he can't do that to, right? Like he's not going to be. You can't do that to Rudy Gobert. He's too long. There's guys out there. I mean, Joel Embiid is too big, just too physically heavy and imposing, I think, to do that to. So I don't know. I'm curious how he ends up doing that because he's got all these finesse moves to his game, and I think one of the biggest things that's happened over the last few weeks as he's been really good is he's played a little bit less finesse, a little bit more just kind of. We talked about it before, but just kind of that bully ball. And, his 3-point shot is also coming around. Like he's shooting 36, I think I tweeted it was 36.6% over his last 20 games. That's right at the number that I think he needs to get to be an MVP. So if he's making his threes and everything else, I don't know how much finesse he needs to have, especially when he gets these switches against smaller guys. But to score against shot blockers, you do need to show that. So I'm just that's a dynamic that I'm going to be curious to see how, I'm going to be curious to see how he kind of navigates that. But he keeps adding other things to his game. I don't see any reason that he won't start adding that at some point soon. And he does have an advantage over guards in that, again, as we've talked about, he's 7'4" and keeps adding muscle. So yeah, I don't when he gets as tall as Taco Fall and he's still doing all this stuff, I'm sure he'll be just fine. But once he figures stuff out, I'll be curious to see what that looks like more than anything. I'm not doubting that he can do it. I'm curious what it looks like when he does.
All right, let's continue this in just a second. First, I got to tell people about BetOnline, which is the place to go for the latest odds, totals, player performances, props, everything you need for your sports betting needs. It's betonline.net. Basketball, both pro and college. We're getting all tournament teams and everything, so we're heading into March Madness now. We are also looking at hockey, boxing, UFC, any sport that you want. It's all there at betonline.net. So head on over to the website today. Use your mobile device, whatever it is. Learn about the trends. Get the action. It's all on betonline.net. Betonline.net. Everything you need for your sports betting needs. BetOnline is where the game starts. Please gamble responsibly. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. How about making Locked On Now your second listen every day? Locked On Now will get you caught up on the night in the NBA from both sides. So whenever there's a game, each host from each team will record a couple minutes and send that on in, and it becomes a podcast for you. So you get both sides of what happened in the game. It's Locked On Now. It's available wherever you get your podcast. And you can also get it on YouTube at the Locked On NBA feed. So let's continue this conversation about Tatum, and then kind of I think this folds into our expectations here moving forward. Tatum's on a heater, right? Or is this who Tatum is now in that last season before? Start slow and then finish the season like super strong. Remember a couple years ago, it was pre-pandemic, where he couldn't make a layup to start the season. We're in the locker room asking him about it. He's like, man, I don't know. And then next thing you know, he's like torching the Lakers in LA. Is Tatum going to be slow start guy and then big finish guy? And then if he is what does that mean for the Celtics?
Well, it's better than the opposite, right? Like it's better than Pascal Siakam. No, I mean,
oh man, Pascal Siakam just sitting there minding his own business.
I know that was uncalled for.
Just pulls out the folding chair and whacks him across the back of the head.
I know it was unfair, not even all that true. I like Pascal Siakam.
What did Pascal do to you?
I assume he listens to Locked On, and if so, I apologize, Pascal.
Big time listener, man. Why wouldn't he be?
No, I mean, look, I actually kind of don't think. I think Tatum, this could just kind of be who he is, because if you remember, I mean, those years where he got really hot from three. That was the gist of what he did. And obviously, last night he was hot from three too. But like over the last few weeks, he has found ways to score without being hot from three. He's doing all these different things, getting to the hoop more, getting to the free throw line a little bit more. All these things that he's doing, I feel like are translatable. And I mean, like you mentioned, he was missing layups that one year. Maybe he goes back to missing layups, in the first part of the season. And again, if so, you would rather have him be great at the end of the season than at the start of it. Sure. However, I do think that like a lot of the stuff that he's doing right now that is so good, all the extra passing, all the getting everybody else involved, and then kind of like using the extra space from other guys being good to get himself going. All that stuff is really important, and it's something that I think he could just kind of do anytime. So, I mean, if I were to guess, I don't know that I don't think he's going to be averaging 40, 50 points a game, but I think that this could have some staying power. I think this could be who he is now.
Tom Westerholm going out on a limb saying that Tatum will not average 50 points a game.
Look, prove me wrong, I guess, but
I'm curious to see how he starts next season, because I don't want to fast forward that far, but it's just thinking about it today. Like, man, this feels like the end of the season from a couple seasons. Like he just all of a sudden in March and April, like he had that 50-point play-in game and then a playoff game, and then he finds a stride like later on. It could just be that's how it's that's how it's been, and that doesn't necessarily mean how it's going to be. That's not how it's going to be moving forward. But for this season, I mean, here we are. Like we're right now in it, and the big talk on Monday was, whoa, oh my God, Celtics, look at what Tatum's doing. Look at what this team is doing. My whole last segment yesterday was, this is an NBA Finals team if they keep playing the way they play. Tatum's an MVP candidate the way if he keeps playing the way he plays. Not this season, but in generally speaking. Are we because the season started the way it did, because November and December existed, are we going too far the other way? And like I was saying to you before we started the show, are we like a person who's been fasting for a week, walking into the old country buffet and just gorging? We're like, oh, wins, yes, expectations. Give us your power rankings, and just making ourselves sick over how good the Celtics are in this particular moment.
So we'll see. There's an interesting comparison to be drawn with the Patriots this year, right? Like where they did the same thing. They started slow. They won like a bunch of games in a row, and then and then they just weren't as like they got a heater. They beat some overmatched teams, some teams who were missing guys, and then at the end of the season, there's a team in the playoffs who's just like objectively better than them. Like that said, I think if you look around, who is the team who is just like objectively better than the Celtics? Like there's not there really aren't that many holes right now. In like the Celtics have the superstar power. They have the superstar, like the superstar, Jaylen, Jayson. Those guys are stars. They have the best starting lineup in the NBA. They have, like, at this point, it feels like the biggest thing that could hurt them is availability. Is if somebody gets hurt, then it's I don't know how deep they are at this point, but the same could be said about pretty much any contender, right? That like if the wrong guy gets hurt, you're in trouble. So I mean, look, I think certainly there is some of what you're saying, right? Where this team was unwatchable for a couple of months. They were just completely infuriating. You're watching them lose to the Timberwolves JV team, and you're just like, ugh. I am like, these guys are as ready to be traded as I am to see them be traded. But at this point now, like it feels completely different, right? Like, and I think that there are enough elements of this team that can keep going that aren't kind of just on a heater that I could see them, that I don't think it's unreasonable to say. I think it's unreasonable to start saying like this team is for sure going to the finals. This team is for sure going to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think it's very reasonable to say there is a path that this team could take where they make it that far. There are avenues that they can follow where they do some really special stuff this year. I mean, again, they got the best defense in the NBA. They got the best starting lineup. And they got a superstar. I don't know. It's like a pretty good starting point.
Yeah, I mean, I ask these questions just because I feel like we need to explore this stuff. I mean, I truly do think that this team has figured something out. Like, this isn't just they're hitting shots. This isn't just they're playing the same way and certain things are just going better. This is they're not playing that way. And first of all, they have everybody. They have their team. And it's not a deep team. And if any one guy gets hurt, the way Ime is using these guys with 7 or 8 guys, any one of those guys gets hurt, it just magnifies their loss. You made this point before. Magnifies their loss, and things have the real potential to fall apart. They are still, I think, kind of walking a high wire to some degree. It's just earlier this season, they were falling off the ladder before they got to the high wire.
Right.
And then they started like really being shaky in the high wire. Now they're doing like, gymnastics on the high wire. They're just like, oh yeah, this is no problem. They got their balance. They're fine. They don't need that little stick that they use in the high wire. Like they're just cool. But doesn't mean they can't fall off. And that is, I think, still every little sprained ankle. And, when Jaylen went down the other day, it was like, oh no. Well, time to write their obit and be done with it. If anything like that happens, and there are guys that you look at up and down the roster, you're like, it could happen to one of these guys because you're just kind of waiting for a shoe to drop. There's always that possibility. But just from a pure basketball perspective, I just feel like these guys they have whatever Ime's been trying to get them to do. They've done it. I think Al Horford said it. For some reason, everything just clicked, and we know what we're trying to do. And I think if there's any one element of this Brooklyn game that hammers at home, has nothing to do with Jayson Tatum at all, actually. The thing that I would point to in this game is what Marcus Smart said. We changed our defense on the fly, and we did it well. We played it perfectly, and we were able to take chances and trust that the guys behind us would have our back. And there's one play late in the game in that final 5-minute stretch where somebody, I forget who it was, somebody left to double. It was Tatum and Horford that left to double KD, and Durant gave it up, and Jaylen Brown he was in between Seth Curry in the corner and might have been Claxton on the post. And as soon as he read Durant was backing up to draw the double team, Jaylen kind of broke, and tipped the ball away. And that ended up being, I think that ended up being the play where Tatum did that kind of crazy one-hand, intentional, unintentional sham god, that like a career highlight for him. That play is like the encapsulation of everything that we should be looking at and saying, like, okay, this is why they have the chance to go to the finals. That was a thing that they did on the fly. This team never blitzes, and they did it effectively. They got Durant to give it up. Jaylen makes a defensive read behind the play. They get out into transition. They get it up to Jayson Tatum. Tatum goes, maintains his dribble, doesn't turn it over, which is a thing that has happened in the past. Goes through a frontline defender and finishes strong in transition. Like, that is just awesome. That play, that stuff, that defensive stuff is where I look at it and go like, okay, that stuff, that's why the Celtics are where they are right now and why all this positive talk is warranted.
Yeah, and I think to your point about, Smart, another thing Smart said was that when guys rotate, they're not afraid to double now because they know that somebody's going to help them behind. And you can you can see it. It's so clear how much more comfortable defensively they are, knowing like, okay, I can come. Everybody's paying attention, right? Like, the whole team is locked in. Doesn't mean they're going to get a stop 100% of the time. Doesn't mean it's always going to work. Certainly doesn't mean it's going to work against Kevin Durant. Like, he breaks defenses, like, even when they're really good. However, yeah, when you see guys double, they look so confident doubling, and then immediately you just kind of see the things happening behind them. Everybody looks locked in. Everybody looks like they're keeping tabs on their guy and the guy who might become open because of the double team. It's good basketball. It's good defense. It's fun to watch. And again, we've talked about it before. I think Udoka deserves a ton of credit for just kind of what he's done with this team in a very short amount of time.
A ton of credit. And I think there will be time as the season continues to progress to really fully get into that. We don't have to, but we kind of have to talk about the Kyrie stuff. So
I know you're so excited about this, man.
I could not be more thrilled to talk about this Kyrie Irving stuff. So thrilled that I need to take a moment, compose my thoughts, contain my giddiness. Really,
yeah, really, Andrew. This is you're out of line.
I'm out. Yeah, I just gotta give me a minute. Give me a minute. We'll come back. We'll talk about the Kyrie stuff. Tom, every once in a while I retweet something and regret it immediately. Last night, that was the quote from Kyrie Irving when he was asked about the boos in Boston. Quote, I know it's going to be like that the rest of my career coming in here. It's like the scorned girlfriend who wants an explanation on why I left, but still hoping for a text back. I'm just like, it was fun while it lasted. First of all, let me just put this out there. Great line. You got us.
It's wide.
Like that was that's a good line. That's funny. Like, got him. Like, all right, great.
Felt a little workshopped, I will say.
It might have been. It might have been.
Line. I assume he knew he was going to get booed. He knew he was going to play because he can only play road games. He knew he was going to get booed. So I feel like, he might have had that one a little bit.
Sure. You work it out in the clubs in the Midwest, and then once you get to Boston and New York, you play the big crowds, and you've got the joke refined. That's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
But good. I think it landed. It got people talking, and whatever. That's fine. When it comes to the boos, I get it. I personally am like, that gives him the attention that he wants. So if I had advice for fans, I'm certainly not going to try to be the gatekeeper and tell you how to be a fan. You want to boo, you boo. That's whatever. I'm just saying I wouldn't boo. I'd just be like, whatever. I think the silence is the worst thing for him. The boos are like, yeah, bring it on. Then he starts to go through his like joke Rolodex and drop stuff like this.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to put it, right? Like, you don't want to like gatekeep like people. Like, you do what you want, man. Like, it's sports. Like, you get mad. Like when earlier when we said like OKC, like OKC people like getting mad at Kevin Durant, I think OKC people are the only people who, if they're mad at Kevin Durant, I'm like, okay, like yeah,
I get it.
I get it. Everybody else, I'm just kind of like, why do you care? Like, you still get to watch Kevin Durant. But OKC people, yeah, he left your franchise. You guys had a great chance of winning a title. All that stuff, sure. Same thing for Celtics fans. It's like, yeah, like you don't like Kyrie. I get it, man. It's been a toxic relationship for a few years now, right? Like, everybody's been kind of like saying things about each other. Kyrie stomped on the logo. Everybody was real mad about that. Glenn Davis, threatened violence against him and then showed up in the front row. So I don't know. I'm certainly not going to do that. I do think that I'm with you that I wouldn't boo, but it's less about like the silence or anything like that. It's just kind of like everybody got what they wanted. Like the Celtics fans wanted a fun team to watch that can win some games. Kyrie got to not play in Boston. He got to play with his buddy KD. Like everybody got what they wanted. So to me, I don't know. I would just kind of feel like no harm, no foul. Right?
How about a thanks for leaving chant? Thanks for leaving.
Sure, that would work.
Like that would be great because like goodbye. Like we're happy that you left because if Kyrie had stuck around, then like I think the worst thing for this franchise would have him actually living up to his word and sticking around and having to deal with this. Like I think it's better that he left. I think if you're going to do anything, show him the appreciation. Like the next time he plays, especially if there's a playoff series, like the first one should be like, thank you for leaving. Not our problem anymore. Like that should be the tone of the Kyrie stuff. But even that shows him the attention. And then, people can say like, oh, he lives in your mind rent free and all that, whatever crap. But
I know, but honestly, if you really wanted to win, I feel like you should cheer him. Like, hey, it's good to see you again, man. Like, yeah, great. I don't know how you're doing. The 8th seed. Damn, that's
man.
Hate to see
we're doing great. Like, you want to make it this girlfriend thing. Like, be like, oh man, we're getting married again. Like, I'm super happy. Like, my spouse is like, the best and super handsome and rich. Like I'm like psyched. So hope you're doing well. I see that you're like not playing all the games. Is everything okay over there? I mean, that's I think the tone. That's the tone.
Yeah. And I mean, like to the other point, I think the thing like booing also is one thing, right? Like if you boo somebody, that's just like normal fan stuff. That's just like normal basketball game. I mean, fans boo their own players when they're not playing. Right? Like booing is just a way to express something. That makes sense to me. Like the Kyrie sucks stuff, I think is at that point you're playing a dangerous game with that one. I think I mean, I know there was a lot made of like Tatum kind of hushing the crowd at that point. And I just think when you're like really getting into it like that, when it's like, Kyrie sucks or I think I think there were like FU Kyrie chants and stuff like that in previous seasons.
Yeah.
That stuff, it's like, that's getting a lot more personal. And I think, I don't know. I've always kind of felt like that sends a message to players who are currently on your team. Like, hey, like if you leave, we're going to be the same to you. And like, I don't know. Is that what you want to send? I don't know.
I get that. And, like Tatum and Kyrie are actually kind of close, like both Duke guys. Like, the first thing that happened at the end of the game, like buzzer sounds, Tatum's got the ball and he turns around and he does the special handshake with Kyrie and they hug. Like, fans can hate Kyrie all you want. I get it. But these guys actually kind of like him. Like there are hugs. And after each Celtics Nets game that Kyrie has played in, he has stuck around afterwards. And there's been a bunch of people around him and they've all sat there and talked for a while. So I will just say that inside the locker room, generally speaking, not the same tone when it comes to Kyrie than other. And maybe that's not universal. Maybe some players are a little less into Kyrie. I don't know. But there's generally speaking, I think a lot more love for Kyrie inside the locker room than there is in the stands. And, I don't, when Tatum was like hushing people, I don't know if that was because people were saying Kyrie sucks as much as it was, hey, Jalen's taking free throws. Everybody want to just chill out for a second. I don't know what you thought about that, but I felt like Jaylen was taking free throws. It's like, everybody calm down.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it had something to do with Kyrie. I mean, it felt like, to me, if I were to guess, it was some combination of the two, right? Because like a Kyrie sucks chant is distracting. Like it's like something that you're like, oh wow, that's not just a boo, that's a Kyrie sucks. Like that's weird.
Yeah.
And I mean, like I might be like kind of a combination of the two, but I think I agree with you completely about the locker room too, because if you kind of go down the list of guys, like Rob Williams has nothing but good things to say about Kyrie Irving. Like he really likes him. I think they had a good relationship. Like, Tatum, like there's a lot to be said for somebody who's nice to your kids, right? And Kyrie is like has always been like nice to Deuce and like all this stuff. Like
sure.
I think I remember Rob saying that like Kyrie was always asking about his kids too. Like it's like there's something about that, right? That's a very personal thing. And if like, yeah, I mean, like, you're my friend, like you're nice to my kid. So it's like, yeah, like it's like, oh, that's my guy. Like he's nice to my kid. Like that's a big thing for guys. And so I think Kyrie and Tatum have vacationed together. Like they know each other quite well. So when Tatum hears Kyrie sucks, I mean, I think he is starting to develop a real relationship with the fans in Boston, right? Like you're starting to see him feed off the energy of the crowd. You're starting to see him yell when it like, himself like get really pumped up when everybody's pumped up. I think there is kind of like a connection, like a good connection forming there. And I think for him, he likes Kyrie. Like Kyrie, I think Kyrie, it's probably safe to say Kyrie is his friend. So,
right.
I think he probably doesn't like, I think he probably doesn't love that. So
I also think in the interest of fairness, like Kyrie makes peculiar decisions.
100%.
And he takes peculiar stances. And some of those stances are unpopular. Okay. Marches to the beat of his own drummer, to use a cliche and put it nicely. But he on the basketball side of things, he can be disruptive. He certainly is the vaccine stance and all of that stuff.
Yes.
Whatever players, it's still disruptive. He makes decisions and says things and does things that are disruptive to a basketball team. However, on the other side, on the outside, I don't think he's a bad person. He has taken a lot of very admirable public stances and has put his money into some very worthy causes and takes, a very vested interest in the WNBA and women's sports. He has a very vested interest in, obviously because of his family, Native American issues. And he does take like on the public side, off the court, as a human being. I don't think he does things in a malicious way. So for the guys in the locker room, people who are playing basketball next to him, that's what they see. They see a guy who, whatever they think of his basketball decisions or on the court decisions, that's one thing, but they see a guy that they can be friends with, that I'm sure has some level of good personality. And, he has had days where even with us, when I was, out there and you were in the scrums with him too, he's been actually like somewhat charming. Like when he has like good days, it's like, oh, okay, I can see this. I can see it. But then he does other things and it's like, oh, geez, here we go. This is the dichotomy. I bring it up just to say why fans boo is the basketball stuff, which is fine. Taking it to a personal level or something that's perceived to be personal, that's where the players will push back. And that's where Tatum, even if I give you that he was doing that strictly because of Kyrie, it's because, okay, boo, cheer, whatever, that's fine. Any sort of thing that we can say crosses into a personal thing, players I think will get upset about, because on a personal level, they like him. And on a human level, I think generally speaking, his heart, Kyrie's heart, is in the right place when it comes to like non-basketball stuff.
Yep. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think it's a real shame that like look, I'm double vaxxed and boosted, but I think it's a kind of a shame that the vaccine stuff has taken such a prominent role in like, that's all that people, they either talk about like his crossovers, or they talk about the vaccine stuff, or they talk about the stuff part that he's a part-time player. Right. And I mean, yeah, he's like, especially, like his work with like, the investments that he's made in the WNBA, the time and the money that he's invested there, like you said, the stuff that he's done for Native American communities, and how he's kind of embraced that part of him. Like, it's really cool. And yeah, he's, I mean, like you said, he makes decisions that, marches to the beat of his own bagpipes or whatever would not be a cliche, but like,
bagpipes are awful. That's a good instrument to associate with his decision making on a basketball court. Just want to put that out there.
And look, I mean, I think you're right too to point out, because to be completely fair, it is disruptive. I mean, the Brooklyn Nets would be a better basketball team if they could have had their star point guard here the whole time. The Celtics would have been like, I don't think Kyrie was the only problem in 2018-19, but he did not help. Like, he did not make things better, and that's disruptive. So if you're on his team and you get sick, I also think it's possible that there are Celtics players who got sick of how disruptive he was on their team, but who still kind of liked him, and who, now that he's on somebody else's team and he's somebody else's problem, and they're probably now like, I like that guy. I don't want to be on his team again, but I do like the guy, and that's fair, dude. Like, how many? Like, there's people out there who, like, again, heart's in the right place. I don't want to see them every day, but if I see them, a few times a year, I'm like, hey, man, it's good to see you. And I mean it,
I'm right here, Tom. Shit.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's been fun being on the Locked On Celtics podcast, everyone.
No, but for real, like, he's the guy that you would like to go get beers with, but you don't want working with you.
Sure, yeah.
Like, we all know that guy.
Yeah, exactly.
We all know that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, I don't think we need to belabor the point on Kyrie anymore. I just, at some point, I'd like to think that we can all just get past it. Maybe not. Maybe Celtics fans just want to carry that and keep on booing, and whatever. That's how you want to do it. That's how you want to do it. I'd like to see it progress to something different. That's just my opinion.
And if it doesn't, like, I'm not going to gatekeep anybody.
No, like, right. It's not like it's the end of the world. It's just what I like to see.
And I'm not going to like judge it or anything. It's just like, I'm going to like judge it if it gets personal like that. Like, but like, yeah, I don't know. That's, I'm with you. I think it would be, the conversations would be more fun if like we didn't have to do this every time. But also, like, I don't know, like, we react to things that happen. Like, we don't get to choose what happens. So I don't know. You don't have to stop booing just so your podcast will stop talking about them. But
all right, we'll leave it at that then. Tom, good to see you. I look forward to seeing you once or twice more this year.
That's generous of you to keep me on after I dissed you on your own pod. But yes, thanks for having me, man.
That's Tom Westerholm, Tom_NBA. Check him out. His work is on Boston.com. I'm John Karalis, John_Karalis, team_ on Twitter. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you're here, if you're new and you've been here this long, then I hope that means that you like the podcast and you want to subscribe. If you are watching on YouTube, same thing. Would love to have you on YouTube. We're pushing 4,400 subscribers now, so getting close to 5,000. You know how much we love round numbers, so especially multiples of 5 for some reason. So please subscribe there, and if you are a subscriber, help me out. Spread the word. Tell everybody that they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast. It's right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.